The Fate of the Furious has finally just come out. Before watching, this is all you need to know about Fast and Furious.
I never fear death or dying. I only fear never trying. I am whatever I am. Only God can.
So there isn't much you need to know about the universe as a whole, because the movies themselves, they actually happen on the same planet that we live, except in their world, nothing serious really happens when there is a big accident. But despite all that, the whole planet is pretty much the same as ours, so there's not much explanation you need there. So all I'm gonna do is give you a brief information about the previous movies, so that you understand some of the concepts and some of the ideas that's been behind them.
This moment, we own it.
So in the first movie, we are introduced to Dominic Toretto, aka Dom, which is played by Vin Diesel. He's actually the owner of a garage, and he's also one of the best racers in the underground street races that they do. Now, together with his family, they're actually running a business where they are stealing trucks. So we are introduced to this character named Brian, who is played by Paul Walker, and he's actually playing a cop that infiltrates onto Dominic's group to try to figure out who are these truck stealers. Now, Brian actually happens to grow very familiar with the group, he grows to respect the group, and he actually falls in love with Mia, which is the sister of Dom. In the middle of the movie, there is this big scene where they go after these trucks, but Brian actually wants to stop them because he knows that something's gonna go wrong. But when he comes there to stop them, they're already halfway through it, and he ends up actually saving them from being killed by the truck driver. After he does this, he reveals that he's a cop, and Dom actually gets angry with him. So he has to go after Dom, and he actually wants to arrest him. But just as he's about to arrest him, the actual Japanese shoot out at Dom and kill one of his best friends. So Dom actually goes after them, and Brian actually helps Dom to go after the Japanese. In the end of the movie, Brian is about to arrest Dom, but he actually lets Dom run away with his own car. And that's kind of how the movie ends.
This moment, we own it.
So on the second movie, Brian is going to be the main character. Vin Diesel is not playing anymore, so there is no Dom. In the very beginning of the movie, Brian is caught by the police.
We see your hands. Put them up.
Now the police is actually planning to give him a clean record if he helps them to catch this big cartel dealer named Verone. Verone is actually hiring people to race for him, so he has to find a race partner. And Brian actually picks his childhood friend named Roman Pierce. And that is when Roman is actually introduced in the series. Roman Pierce was a friend of Brian, but he actually stopped being a friend of Brian when Brian became a cop, because Roman Pierce was actually in jail for 3 years, and he kind of blames Brian for that. So with the help of Monica, which is an undercover cop actually working with Verone for 1 year, they get to work with Verone, and they are hired to be 2 of his main drivers. Verone has them go to a job for him where they have to transport a lot of money, but halfway through the job, the police comes after them. They actually drive into a garage. The police actually surrounds the garage, but as they come out with thousands of other cars that were actually from one of Brian's friends that was helping him, so the police actually loses them. So when they actually arrive at Verone's place, they see that Verone is already suspecting Monica to be a cop, and he plans on killing her, so they end up having to save her. So he actually grabs Monica, he puts her on the boat, and there is this crazy scene where Brian and Roman actually get in a car and they jump over to the boat. After they help the police to arrest him, the police starts trusting them more, and they grant them their freedom.
This moment, we own it.
So the third movie actually happens in the future. We don't know exactly when, but we know that it revolves a future story that's not much to do with the main story so far. The story revolves around Sean, who actually goes into Tokyo because wherever he goes, he loves driving, so he creates a lot of chaos and a lot of havoc.
Can I get a copy of that?
In the very beginning in Tokyo, he actually has a big conflict there because they drive using a lot of drifts.
What do you mean, drift?
dictionary?
Now, Brian. Now, Sean is not very accustomed to actually drifting, so in the very beginning, he loses to this main antagonist of the movie named DK, Drifting King. But there is a friend of DK that's named Han, who actually sees Sean, and he sees the way that he has this passion for the cars, and he actually starts to trust him, he starts to actually lend him his cars, and he starts to teach him how to drift.
Again.
Now, meanwhile, DK learns that Han is actually stealing from his business. So he goes after Han, but as he's actually going after Han, there is this gray car that's gonna be imported in the future. He actually hits Han's car, and Han's car explodes and Han dies. To actually avenge Han's death, Sean goes over to DK and he challenges him to a race where the loser has to leave Tokyo. He actually wins the race, and the bad guys lose and the good guys wins as usual. But in the very end, he actually learns that Han was a very good friend of Dominic Toretto, and he even meets him at the end.
Nice ride.
I won it from my friend Han a few years ago.
This moment, we own it.
The fourth movie, it goes a little bit back to Dominic's story, and Dom is still running around, is still stealing stuff, and is stealing some trucks of gasoline in the very beginning, and we learn this is because of a noble purpose in a short film that they made. He wants to steal gasoline to actually give to the people because the people are needing gasoline desperately. But we see Dominic with his new team going after the gasoline, and his new team consists in himself, Letty, who's actually playing in the first movie as well, who is Dominic's love. We have Han, who we all know by now, and we have these two guys named Tegoleo and Santos. Meanwhile, we also see the story of Brian, who's actually become a cop again, and he's going after this guy named Arturo Braga. In the very beginning, we see Dominic stealing this truck with this big highway scene. In the end of the job, Dom actually pays everyone their cuts, and he has a conversation with Han saying there's a lot of heat around them now and they probably would better to split up. He also tells this to his lover Letty, but Letty becomes a little bit reluctant on leaving him, so he runs away in the middle of the night. Now, a short while goes by, and we see that unfortunately it so happens that Letty is dead. Of course, when Dom learns about this, he actually goes after the people who killed her, he goes into the crime scene to investigate, and eventually he's led to Arturo Braga, who's actually the guy Brian is after as well. So Brian and Dom actually list up to be Braga's next employees, and they actually become his next racers to be delivering his money. Now, while working with them, Dom actually makes a very good connection with one of Braga's employees named Giselle, and she's going to be important for the future as well. Now, of course, a lot of the movie goes by, but ultimately they actually catch him alone, and Dom is about to kill him, but he actually exercises mercy and decides to allow Brian to actually arrest him instead of killing him. Now, in the end, Dom actually allows himself as well to be caught by the police because he's just tired of running.
You gotta get out of here.
I ain't running anymore.
So Dom goes to trial. Brian actually tries to dissuade the court to arrest him because he was an asset on the apprehension of Braga, but it doesn't work so well, and the judge sentences him for 25 years of life in prison. So we see Dom being transported to prison. It's a very sad scene, very sad music. He's going on a bus to be transported back to prison, but as he's being transported, and the movie ends like that before he's actually rescued.
This moment, we own it. I'm not the
So the fourth movie I've already talked about. I'm gonna talk about the fifth movie. This movie follows the story of the fourth one, and actually Dom, Brian and Mia are running from the police and they end up in Brazil, actually running away from the US. Now they actually get a job in the very beginning to steal some cars, but Dom actually understands that he's gonna be betrayed by the people working with him, so he sabotages the job and steals one of the cars for his own. He only afterwards realizes that this job was for a guy named Reyes, who's actually a big mafia boss, and he actually tortures them so that they would tell him where the car is. They eventually escape, but they realize the car is important, so they try to figure out what it is that the car has so important, and they find there is a ship inside of the car. Now, this ship actually holds the places where Reyes has all of his money and all of his corruptions and all of his kettles. So they actually make up a plan to steal all of Reyes's money, because of course he's a big bad mafia guy. Now, in parallel to that, there is also this big guy introduced in the series named Hobbs. He's actually played by The Rock, or aka Dwayne Johnson, and Hobbs actually works for a special team where they hunt down guys that are wanted. So his job at the moment is to hunt down Brian, Mia and Dom. Now when he arrives in Brazil, he actually partners with a girl named Helena, who's actually one cop that is not corrupt, so that's why he wants to work with her. So back to Dom and Brian, they're actually making this plan to steal Reyes's money.
We're gonna take all of Reyes's money, every dime of it.
You realize we're talking about going up against the most powerful guy in all of Rio?
Yes, we are.
Then we're gonna need a team.
And so they gather a team of all the guys from previous movies, you know, Roman Pierce, Han, we have Giselle, we have Leo and Santos, and also this guy named Tej, who was actually on the second movie, who was a very good friend of Brian. So they're actually making this big plan to steal all of the money from Reyes, but in the end of their planning, when they're actually about to go, they find out that Hobbs is after them, and Hobbs actually arrests them and he brings them in to go to prison. Now, as Hobbs is actually bringing them to prison, Reyes guys appear with weapons and they sabotage the arrest, they shoot down Hobbs and Hobbs' team, and they end up killing all of Hobbs' team. Now, just when they are about to kill Hobbs as well, Dominic's team actually sets free because of Elena that actually helped them, and they actually save Hobbs and kill all of Reyes's guys. So Hobbs actually gets into their plan, they go to steal Reyes's money. In the very end, they actually end up killing Reyes as well.
Help me. It's for my team, you son of a bitch.
But Hobbs is still on duty and he tells them that they actually only have 24 hours to run away. So in the end, they take Reyes's money and they just go live a free life, free of worries, with all that money can buy. Brian actually takes the time to give more attention to Mia, who's actually pregnant at the time, and he wants to take care of his family. In the end of the fifth movie, we actually see a post-credit scenes where Hobbs actually finds some information that Letty is still alive.
This moment, we own it.
In the sixth movie, Hobbs has a new partner named Riley, and they are both after a former major in the SAA Spec Ops. He has become an outlaw and is actually creating a lot of havoc, a lot of chaos, so Hobbs is actually after him. And his name is Owen Shaw. Now Hobbs realizes that he cannot take Shaw alone, so he tries to track down Dominic's team to actually invite them to come work with him. Now to do this, he actually presents Dom with a picture of Letty that he found, saying that she's still alive and it's possible that they can find him. So Dom actually gathers the team again. The team is now composed by Dom, Brian, Roman, Giselle, Han and Tej. Yeah, they don't have Leo and Santos anymore. So while they're actually after Sean, there is this scene where Dom actually finds Letty. He actually gets to spend some time alone with her, and he learns that she actually has amnesia. She doesn't remember about him, but he actually explains her who she is and how special she is for him and all that stuff. While going after him, Shaw actually takes possession of a tank because there is an important ship inside of the tank that's very valuable.
Guys, we gotta come up with another plan. They got a tank. I'm sorry, did somebody just say a tank?
He rides the tank down a highway and they actually have to stop him. So Dom's team actually stop the tank, they arrest Shaw, and they also recover the ship. Now the bad part is that when Shaw is in prison, he actually reveals that he has Mia under arrest. And so he plans on kill her if they don't actually release him with the ship. So they actually have to allow him to get away, and he's actually driving to get away and get his car inside of a plane that's actually in movement. So they have this big action scene again where they are trying to stop Shaw from actually entering the airplane and fly away. Unfortunately, in the middle of the action scene, Giselle actually dies to save Han. In the end, Dom is actually fighting Brian. No, he's not. In the end, they actually get Shaw and they throw him off the plane while the plane is moving. We don't know exactly what happens to him, but Dom actually recovers the ship again and he hands it to Hobbs. Hobbs actually says, "You've delivered the ship to us, it's very valuable, so name your price." And Dom actually just wants his freedom, so he just says that he wants his home back from the first movie. That's actually what he's given. So in the end, they have this big party on the barbecue. Of course, Han is very sad and he explains that he's about to go to Tokyo alone. And that's kind of how the movie ends. Now, in the middle of the credits scene, there is this scene where we see that part from the third movie where Han dies, when he's running away from DK and there is this gray car that hits him, and now it focuses a bit more on the gray car. And who's driving the gray car? It's actually this actor, Jason Statham. We don't know exactly why he does this, but in the end of the movie, he grabs the phone and says,
Dominic Toretto, you don't know me. You're about to.
This moment, we own it.
Finally on this movie, it's all gonna be about this next big bad guy who is the brother of Owen Shaw. His name is Deckard Shaw and he's played by Jason Statham. In the very beginning, he's actually visiting his brother who's in the hospital, is in coma, and he's talking to him and saying that he's gonna revenge him and avenge him and he's gonna go after Dom. But in the very beginning, Deckard actually goes into Hobbs' office to try to figure out who was the team that actually took down his brother.
Just one sec.
It has this fight scene with Hobbs and ends up putting him in the hospital. But this Deckard guy doesn't stop there, he goes after Han, and that's when that scene where Han dies, now for the third time, actually happens. And he calls Dom and he actually sends a bomb to Dom as well, and the bomb explodes and blows up almost all of Dom's house. So Dom is actually going after him. Now while they're actually chasing him, Dom actually meets this other team that's also after him, who is actually led by Kurt Russell. Yes, that guy from Baywatch. He introduces himself to them as Mr. Nobody.
I'm Mr. Nobody.
Now this guy proposes to Dom to work with him to catch the card, but he actually needs Dom to do a job for him. Now they need Dom to actually rescue a hacker they have that's named Ramsey, that's being held by a military terrorist named Mose. They want these hackers so bad because he actually built something that they call God's Eye. This machine has the capability to infiltrate into every camera, every microphone in the world, including every cell phone, and track down anyone or any people that they actually want. And they're proposing this to Dom, saying that if Dom helps them, the first person they're gonna track down is Deckard. Ultimately, Dom accepts, so they go after this hacker. They have this big conflict with Moses' team. but ultimately they get the hacker. Now the hacker tells them that the drive that they're after is actually hid on a speed drive that she gave to a friend in Abu Dhabi. The thing is, when they get to Abu Dhabi, they find this friend of hers that's actually sold the speed drive to a rich prince in Abu Dhabi. So they infiltrate this party where the prince is, and they try to steal the car where the speed drive is. They actually steal the chip from the car, but not before actually driving the car through 3 different buildings on one of the most amazing action scenes in Hollywood history. So when they get this machine, they actually use it to try to track down Deckard, and they ultimately go after him on a spot, but is actually waiting for them because he's partnering now with their enemies, Mose. Mose actually steals God's Eye from them, and they end up running away from him. So Mose, after they run away, he tries to track them down using God's Eye himself. But what happens is that Dom's team figures out a way to hack into God's Eye so that they can actually stop him. So the ending of the movie, Dom's team is actually trying to hack into God's Eye, and Dom is having this huge fight with Deckard on the top of a building. So there is this amazing fighting scene they have on top of the building, and in the end, Dom actually helps to get Deckard to prison, and so Hobbs takes Deckard into prison.
You do know none of this will keep me, right?
Well, once you dig through 38 feet of concrete and steel, my fist and a body bag will be waiting for you on the other side. So I suggest you get to digging, boy.
That's kind of how the plot ends. Now, as most of us are aware of, the actor Paul Walker, who was playing Brian, actually passed away halfway through shooting this last movie. So in the end of the movie, they make this cinematic ending in tribute to Paul Walker, in tribute to Brian, which is like the way to say goodbye to Paul Walker and the way to say goodbye to Brian in the series. And that's kind of how the movie ends, in tribute for Paul.
I see you again.
So that's pretty much all you need to know about the franchise before you see the movie that just came out. If you like this video, please press the button like in the end. It doesn't cost you anything and it's a huge help. Also, if you can, subscribe to the channel so that you get more videos like this. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and remember, life is much more than a movie. Peace out!
I never feared death, but